What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Divorce Coach Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Joining me today is Andra Davidson. Andra, let's just jump right into this, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Thanks. I am a certified divorce coach. I'm a mediator, also trained mediator. I'm collaboratively trained, and I work with people who want to minimize the impact of divorce on themselves, on their children, reduce conflict, and come out better on the other side. So, my undergrad degree is in psychology for what it's worth. I have a master's degree as well, and this is the work that I really was meant to be doing. I really love helping people rediscover their confidence, figure out that they're going to be okay, and get through this really challenging period and come out as a new and improved version of themselves. And I know it doesn't feel like that when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it. I've been there too. But I do believe that that's possible, and that's really what I work toward.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of what we're going to focus on as we were talking before I hit that red record button. It's a sort of common theme. I say it all the time. This is an opportunity. Don't waste it. But there's a lot more nuance necessary, I think, to that statement because when you're in the beginning, and someone says, like the very, very beginning, someone says, this is a good opportunity for you. And you're like, what the fuck are you even talking about? So
Yeah.
I kind of want to define that a little bit. Like in what way is this an opportunity? As specific as we can get. That's again, you're let's say you're a guy named Michael and you were how long ago was it? You were 42 years old and
Not to be
you're
specific or anything, right?
no, not to I
Yeah.
mean, geez, that talk about me so much so that I probably seem like a narcissist, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole different, yeah, that's a
Yeah,
whole different podcast, right?
that's another episode. And so you're told by your wife at the time, and you're like, oh shit, what now? And someone says this is an opportunity. Okay, how so?
Yeah. Well, first, let's be real. It's not going to feel like an opportunity that first day.
Yeah,
Okay. It's going to feel like what I also describe divorce as, which is a shit sandwich that you have to eat the whole way through.
yeah,
And
agreed.
I believe that entirely. I actually think that the opportunity is in the willingness to accept that this is going to be all of those different things throughout different times of the process. So for that person who's been told 2 days ago that, their life as they know it is turning upside down and everything is going to change, the opportunity that exists right there is to decide, okay, how am I going to show up during this time, right? And that may even be too soon.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing is to process information. When you get news like that, if it comes as a surprise, which it may or may not, depending on the situation that you're in, but if you're really caught off guard, you are going to need a little bit of time to process the information, understand what's happening, what the changes are going to be, what your timeline is, some of those logistical changes in your life that are going to need some adjustment, right? That are going to change drastically. Acceptance is not, an overnight thing. To admit that this is happening, to accept that this is going to go forward, may be where you need to spend your energy initially. Living in that place of what is this change going to look like for me? How am I going to be who I think I am? Many of us, our identity is tied up with our family and our kids and being in that role. Whether it's provider, whether it's, participant, whatever, that varies depending on your situation. But so many of us, our identity comes from that role that we play in our
Yeah,
family.
yeah,
And to accept that I can still be a whole human and a good human and a contributing person and parent and, sibling, friend, partner, eventually, maybe all the things, right? But it's going to look different. that is the first hurdle I would say that someone who's found out 2 days ago is going to need to live with. So there, just like anything else, there are stages that we all go through in something like this, in a huge transition like this. Um, so once somebody starts to accept, okay, this is going to happen, that's a different kind of a place to start really thinking about where is the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get through the initial stages, that's for sure. And I think that, I mean, obviously this is complex. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a podcast, right? It would be like, there's no episode. I say this all the time, but there's no episodes on how to brush your teeth. Like, I think we got that one down, right? Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
So, but this is much more complicated. And so, yeah, you have to, even hearing this is an opportunity in the beginning might be sort of, it feels, this is something I struggle with from time to time in helping people because in saying things like that, it almost invalidates the pain because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is not a big, this is a great opportunity. It's no big deal. You're gonna be fine. And it's like, but this fucking really hurts. That
Yeah.
aside, so once you get sort of past that, what are some ways that you can turn it into an opportunity? What are the things that you can do to make this sort of fruitful seems like a fucked up word to use, but let's call it that.
No, I actually think fruitful is right because at the end of the day, um, fast forward a year, 3 years, 5 years. This is where I think there is an opportunity back in the beginning
Hmm.
is to look at that. Look at what you want. Who do you want to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? Where do you want to be? What kind of a parent? What kind of a friend? Do you want to have another relationship in your life? Some people don't, some people do. What kind of a relationship if you do? What are the criteria that you want to be met in your life to make that successful? Where people get tripped up, this is where I see the most. Where people get tripped up in the beginning stages is in thinking about decisions in relation to how it is going to impact their spouse, not them. Okay, well, I don't want to give her, I'll give you a perfect example. I was talking just before this podcast with a client, and we were working on his parenting plan.
Hmm.
His ex wife wants Monday, Tuesdays. She, for whatever reason. And he said, but I don't really want to give her Monday, Tuesdays. I said, how come? Because I think Mondays might be better. Okay, what about Mondays might be better? Well, what if I want to, the holidays are more often on Mondays. I said, okay, well, that's a legitimate point. We might want to split them. Let's
Right.
split the holidays as they come up. What he really realized as we went through this discussion was that he didn't want to give her Monday, Tuesday because she wanted Monday, Tuesday, not because Monday, Tuesday was of any difference to him at the end of the day. Where where I think there is opportunity and where I like to focus with people the most is on doing things that benefit them because it benefits them, because that's the person they want to be at the end of the day,
Hmm.
versus just reacting in a situation so that you harm your ex.
Hmm.
Because that harm, truly, it doesn't really harm your ex that much. That is poison. That's poison in your body and in your mind and in your spirit that you have to live with. Your ex doesn't even know why you said no. And
No.
you're walking around with the poison coursing through your veins
Yeah.
because it's consuming you.
Yeah.
So the opportunity from the very beginning is to recognize that you can choose the high road simply and solely because it is who you want to be, not because it has any impact on the people around you. But oh, by the way, it does, and it will benefit them, and that will benefit you too.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
this is perfect. So this is specific, right? So
yes,
we're going to be better at making decisions across the board. Because if you can figure out how to make a better decision in such a charged scenario, then you're going to be
yep,
better at making this. As long as you learn, like, oh, why, how, why, all these things, like, why am I doing this? What is the purpose? What is the reason? All those questions you were sort of asking your client. So here's an absolute thing that you can, an opportunity to improve at your decision making can be achieved through this process, 100%, right?
yes, yes,
And then
which serves you well beyond the process
for sure.
so that it's good for you in the process and beyond. Yeah.
And then the other sort of piece of this is better emotional regulation, because you're going to have to regulate your emotions in order to make these decisions in a better way, right? So
Absolutely. So I always
specific.
say, yes, and I always say this. It's a really brutal irony that we need to be at our decision making best during divorce, despite
Mm.
feeling at our emotional worst, right?
Oh, yeah.
That just sucks. That is part of the shit
Yeah.
sandwich.
Yeah.
We have to make important, consequential decisions, and we feel like crap most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
We're not regulated, we're exhausted, we're depleted, we're overwhelmed, we might be short tempered. All these things are almost working against us in our ability to make these really important decisions. So the key there is recognizing that, first of all, acknowledging that you are emotionally depleted. You're just not at your best. It's just, unless you're Superman, or you've decided somehow you rose above. I don't know. If so, please call me. I want to know what you did.
Right.
And if you are like the rest of us and you are dealing with that, emotional overwhelm and depleting sense of exhaustion, all those things, acknowledging that and figuring out, okay, what are my priorities? What are my goals for this process? Because if once you do that, I think it's one of the most important steps you can take in the process. And the sooner the better, honestly. Doesn't mean they won't change. You can revisit the goals along the way. But the sooner you start thinking about, okay, my goals are, for example, I want to be a really healthy co-parent. I want to be able to coexist with my ex in the same room and celebrate, birthdays and anniversaries and graduations and whatever. Or I want to come out and I want to know that I took the high road. I did the best I could. I want to be the best role model I can be for my kids. I want to be the best provider I can. Whatever those goals are, right? To set those, when you get clear about them, then you have a sounding board that you can use throughout the process to help you make decisions. So every time something difficult comes up, you're not starting over, right? You can say, okay, well, does this help me get to my goal?
Mm.
If I don't want to give her Monday, Tuesdays, does that get me to my goal of being a healthy co parent?
Mm.
And if the answer is no, I think you give her Monday, Tuesdays.
Yeah.
I
It's
think it's really important to do that, because those goals help you make decisions.
yeah, 100%. I mean, and I did the exact opposite. I mean,
You did.
oh, 100%. Yeah, no, I was angry and bitter, and I was in denial in some ways, but not in a I wouldn't accept it because I thought it was bullshit, and I was just so angry. Yeah, I was very angry. But I mean, that's a man thing in general, being very general here, but I think that's a conversation that we've had many times on the podcast about how men lean on their anger. With that in mind, you have clients of both genders, and I'm just
Yep.
curious about a couple of things. One, have you seen examples of men or women that aren't focused in that kind of way that you were sort of describing here, and were able to
Yeah.
come around and get focused and get goals and make good decisions? I'm sure you have, but
Yeah.
I want to know. And then, what is your take on the difference between how it's handled by men and women? And I'm sure, and that's probably it's broad question. It might not be fair, but it obviously then also who made the decision is going to be a determining factor, right? So if the man decided,
Yeah.
then it's going to be easier, whatever the fuck that means to him, and vice versa. So a lot of questions in there, but first, I guess, is the examples. Have you seen examples of people who were just kind of a mess, kind of angry, and were able to sort of make the best decisions possible for them and their children?
Yeah, I have. And in fact, one of my greatest clients right now, I love him, is a man who came to me because he was so angry and so consumed by this, so bitter, and felt like he couldn't detach at all. He was taking it out on his work life, his relationships. He didn't feel like he was being as good of a parent because, like you're saying, it's just all consuming, right? And he was completely overwhelmed by this anger and bitterness. Um, and his lawyer actually sent him to me and said, I can't do this for you all the time. You have to work out some of this stuff. So, to his credit, He was willing to do it. To his credit, he's been a really willing participant and listener, very active in asking for advice and input.
Mm.
And I think, for your listeners, I think that's really important. If you're not willing to listen to any input, don't go ask for it.
Yeah.
If, just don't bother, don't waste your money,
Yeah.
truly,
Right.
because you have all the answers.
Yeah.
For anybody who is willing to be a little vulnerable, put themselves out there and say, there's something for me to learn here. There's some growth opportunity for me here. I might not know what it is yet, but I'm willing to explore what it is. Those people find transformation. Those people who ask for that find transformation. And this client has made a 180 turn. And in part, we have been working on messaging.
Mm.
So she sends him triggering texts on a regular basis, right? She sends him these things. And in the past, he's just responded right away. And they've started this back and forth. Well, one of the first things I did was say, you're not responding to that crap anymore. You don't respond to that. And we have started figuring out the brief, informative, factual, firm method of response. You guys may know this. It's from Bill Eddy. It's called BIFF, and that's what it stands for: brief, informative, factual, firm. And it is a way to respond that is all about the substance and not about the editorial, right? What are you sharing? And keeping it in that little tiny square window and not going outside of it. Doing that alone has changed their dynamic,
Mm.
right? Setting some boundaries, figuring out where he can take back the control for himself. He felt like she had all the control because when she would instigate, he would follow and then it would blow up. So I have seen, he's a great example of a real success story in this particular area, but
Sure.
I see it even less dramatically all the time, where people realize that when they can take back control of communication, and that is a very common denominator, is
Mm-hmm.
communication.
Mm-hmm.
When they take back the control and recognize that their spouse can never make them respond to a text, pick up the phone, send an email they don't want to send, excuse me. When they take that power back and say, I actually get to control when I send something or what I say, to whom I say it, all of a sudden the ball's back in their court. And that feels better. None of us want to feel out of control. None of us want to feel like all this stuff is happening to us. We don't want to, nobody likes to feel like that.
Yeah.
So to take back control, starting with communication and being open to setting stronger boundaries is a huge, huge place for people to begin if they're really stuck in their journey. And I know you asked a bunch of other questions, but you might have
Yeah,
to
well,
ask again. I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. No, 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 that's okay. I have a bad habit of doing that sometimes. I want to stick on that because here is another clear and concise opportunity, right? Some folks, and there's a couple different ways to sort of look at this, but knowing how to engage properly with folks, knowing how to set boundaries. I know it's a buzzword and all that kind of shit, but man, is it important? Um,
Yeah.
so knowing how to stand up for yourself, all these things sort of are layered, and sometimes we stand up for ourselves too much. We go overboard and become a giant fucking asshole. Sometimes we don't stand up for ourselves at all, and then we get walked all over. So again, a crystal clear opportunity is to learn how to engage with folks in a way that is it gives you your power. It's critical and key. It's a giant opportunity.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
and it's hard too. And I'm not saying none of this stuff am I saying. I don't think you're saying that you're going to perfect it like that, or maybe ever
Oh,
even,
no.
right? You know, because
Nope.
it's a
Nope.
constant. Dynamics are always changing, and feelings and situations and all kinds of things. But you can absolutely get better at learning how to engage with folks in a way that is powerful for you or makes you feel like you're empowered. So I wanted to focus
It's
on that.
it's a journey, to your point. That's also a buzzword, right? But it really
Yes.
is. This is a
Yeah.
process. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen overnight. There's a question that I really like to ask people, and I think it can be very valuable for your listeners. When they decide to respond to something, ask yourself, what's my true intention here?
Hmm.
What's my true intention? Now you have to be willing to be honest with yourself.
Hmm.
Is my true intention to screw my spouse, to piss them off, to do something that will harm them? Is my true intention to do what's best for me, to take the high road, to do what's best for the kids?
Yeah.
Asking that question and answering it honestly will help you make a decision in the moment too.
Yeah.
Because if you align that question with your goals, your answers become real clear. They're not guesswork anymore. If you set goals for who you want to be and you're willing to ask yourself some tough questions, you make your decisions a lot easier.
Yeah. No, agreed. I think there's an amount of courage necessary in this process,
Yeah, there
to
is.
ask those questions and to receive honest answers. Let me go back to the other sort of question. And again, is this fair or not? I don't know. But in terms of the struggles that you see in clients, male versus female, are there differences? I'm sure there are. I know that the who decided is a factor, but just in general, what are the struggles the same? Or is it really that it does matter who files and there's too much that's too intertwined for not to be a factor? But what are the differences in a general way that you have seen between male and female clients, just out of my own curiosity?
Yeah, it's interesting. I I don't think it's as much about man or woman. I think it's more about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Who started it and how did it occur?
Mm,
Right? So if somebody feels wronged, that is a very different scenario from two people who grew apart and agree together that their marriage is, you know, irretrievably broken and they're moving forward. When someone feels that the other did something wrong, um, and has to respond to that, feels shame
mm,
or embarrassed or less than, that creates a very difficult dynamic that drastically impacts the process. So to me, the process, that's really the most important common denominator is how it happened, not whether it's a man or a woman who started it. Because I have clients on both sides, and both sexes. So I really, not to be evasive on it. I just
no,
don't think
no,
it's
I'm not.
the
Yeah,
motivating factor. Yeah,
I'm not surprised. I mean, I think men and women are very different in some ways, but we're all human, and I'm sure that
yeah,
the extenuating factors are probably more of a factor than a gender. Which
yeah.
leads me to another question in terms of how are they ending? In general, probably not a fair question. In general, are you seeing infidelity, growing apart? Like, is there a general, or is it just all this smorgasbord of shit?
Well, I really like the description, the smorgasbord of shit, because I actually think it often really is.
Yeah.
Even in those cases where you can clearly say, okay, this was brought on by infidelity, right? Even in those cases, infidelity didn't happen out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Yeah.
Um,
True.
and even in cases where people break up in, gray divorce cases, right? After decades and decades of marriage, and someone decides, I am not happy in this anymore. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to change my life. To throw a hand grenade into your life in that kind of a way after 30, 40 years of marriage, something built up over time.
Yeah.
That didn't just happen in a vacuum either.
No.
So, I do think that it your description, I think, is best. It's just a giant smorgasbord of shit of
Yeah.
how do we choose what shit caused what. It's
Yeah.
very nuanced for everybody. I think it's one of the crazy things about divorce is that the divorce rates are high, right? They're between 40 and 50%. So almost half the people in the world have dealt with this, or at least,
Yeah.
in the United States have
Yeah.
dealt with this. And yet, when we're going through it, it feels so completely isolating and alone, like no one
Mm,
could possibly understand how
yeah.
we're suffering, right?
Yeah.
And that's because there are so many levels of nuance for each of us in our
Yeah.
own unique situation.
Yeah, you're right. Right. I mean, so many people go through it, but it seems like when you're so alone. And I think,
Yeah.
at least for men, I think that's partially true of anything dramatic and traumatic. Like guys don't, we don't talk.
It's a big problem.
It is a huge problem. I mean, male suicide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's crazy because so many people go through it, but yet and that's why I do what I do, because it is geared towards men, because I go ahead and look. There's not a lot for men out there,
Right.
sadly, and it shouldn't be that way. I wanted to ask another question about clients. I'm just curious. Have you ever turned anyone away, like, or like in terms of like you started working with them and you're like, I can't help you?
Yeah, I actually have. It's a really interesting question. Nobody's asked me that before, and I love it. And the reason that I would turn somebody away is if they are not interested in looking at their own choices at all.
Yeah,
If they are only interested in, disparaging the other person, in blowing it up, in continuing the toxicity,
yeah,
and that, just nurturing that negative um, emotion and the back and forth, the conflict. If that's where they want to spend their energy, I'm not your person.
yeah,
So, I feel very strongly that even when you've been wronged and things have gone bad, um, and it's unfair, and divorce, by the way, is fundamentally unfair all the time. There's just, it is.
yeah,
That does not give you a pass to be a good person.
yeah,
It doesn't mean you're off the hook to be a decent parent.
yeah.
And I would remind parents who get into that cycle that it's understandable. I don't say that with judgment, okay? It's understandable. We've all been angry and frustrated, but we're the grown-ups, and part of our job for those of us that are parents is to step back from that and do what's best for our kids. And when people get into that, spin of no, they're terrible, it's all their fault, I can't possibly move past it because it's all their fault, I ask them to remember, do you love your kids more than you hate your ex? And that question usually stops people
Yeah, I mean,
because
yeah, you better be able to answer that one. Yes, but
I,
maybe
but
some can't.
sometimes you need a reminder, right?
That's true. That's true.
Sometimes you just need a reminder that, oh my gosh, am my choices even making that a question? Of
Mm.
course I love my kids more than I hate my ex. If my actions are showing otherwise, I better get my shit together. I better make some changes. Because if I'm acting differently, that's harming my kids. Because whether or not you like your ex, and you probably don't since you're leaving them, and that's all fine, but your kids your kids do better when they have relationships with their parents, with both parents, whenever
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely.
And part of our job as parents is to help them with the tools to build those relationships on their own. They're gonna, if your ex is a shit, they're gonna figure it out all by themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
right? I
yes.
mean, that person will dig their own hole. Watch them go.
Yeah.
They don't need you to hand them the shovel. They don't need you to start digging for them. They will do it. And instead of you being responsible for contributing to it, you can be the safe place, the place
Hmm.
where your kids come to and say, I want to talk to you about this stuff. This is what I'm seeing in my other parent. How do I deal with this? And wouldn't you rather be the support person for your kids? Wouldn't you rather be that one that they come to and that you're the steady, reliable force in their lives?
Yeah.
I think most of us would.
1,000%. And here we go, another clear example of an opportunity. And this one, I think it's similar to all the others in that it feels like the reason is shitty, but you can absolutely learn to be a better parent. I think it would be better if the household was together. I think that studies bear that out. I feel that in my gut. It would have been better in, at least in my circumstance. And I think in most people, I think if you're in a relationship for a long period of time, I think there was good there, obviously. And so then I think it can be fixed. Obviously there's caveats and infidelity and lying and all kinds of stuff, right?
Right.
But all of that aside, You can't do anything about that. That's it. In terms of your divorce is happening, it's over, it's done. Okay, where's the opportunity to be a better parent? How do you do that? What's the best way to be a better parent going forward when you're in a divorced situation and you don't see your kids 100% of the time?
Oh, so many good ways to do that. And it's such a great question. First, think about the fact that your job is to help your kids build healthy relationships with both of you. What is that? So, what does that physically look like? When your kid comes home from the other parent's house, do you ask them how they did? Do you say, I hope you had a good time with your mom? Do you say, I hope that, I'm glad it was fun? Tell me about it. Do you make a safe space for them to be who they are? Or do they feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you, that they
Mm,
can't talk about what they did at the other parent's house, that they
right,
can't mention that they went and saw a movie because you might want to take them to that movie?
right.
What are the things? What kind of an environment are you creating in your house? I grew up the child of divorce. My dad and my stepmom got married when I was just 6.
Mm,
So I grew up with my stepmom. My When I would come back, one of the most amazing things now that I look back on is that my stepmom would say, "How's your mom? I hope you guys had a good time. I'm so glad you had time together." That gave me permission to just be myself.
yeah.
I didn't have to worry about protecting my other parents.
Mm,
Um, it was a gift that I didn't realize they had given me until I was much older and I saw different divorced families. And I'm not saying that that is possible for everyone, but I think it's possible for most people, honestly. Create a welcoming and safe space for your kids wherever they are. Support them. Don't make them feel guilty about spending time with the other parent. Don't make them choose. Your job is to be the adult and to support them, and knowing that their healthy relationship with two parents is in their best interest. How are you going to facilitate that? What are you going to do every day to make that a reality for your kid? Every day. What's a step you're going to take to do that? I'm glad you're having fun with your other parent. Oh, that's so cool that you got to go see XYZ. I'm so glad you had that. Love and support them and create that warm environment. It will come back to you a millionfold.
yeah. Again, you nailed it. And again, it feels invalidate, not invalidate. Yeah, I guess invalidating. It's like I shouldn't even have to deal with this, but here we are, right? Um, you
Well,
don't.
that's a hard thing, right? We
It
don't want
is
to have to deal with it, but
no.
neither did the kids. They didn't sign up for it.
Bingo. That's the more important one. And I think sometimes we get lost in the pain of it, especially early, the 6 months, even a year or whatever. I mean, everyone's
Yeah,
different, but
it takes
um,
everyone different time. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a really, really specific question because I have dealt with this very recently. Um, in terms of if in order to try and ensure um there is you're the safe parent and stuff. I will sometimes it's not often, but it does happen. It happened recently where I get a call from my oldest daughter and she is like, I want to get out of here. Mom is driving me crazy.
Mm.
She did this, she did that, and they're arguing and they're fighting, and I'm like, it's not my time, sweetheart. Just try and work it out. Take a break. Go hang out in your room for a little while. Like, but is there a better way I could handle that? I don't think so, but maybe there was, maybe there is. What is the best way? I know that's probably, obviously objective or whatever, but like, what do you think?
Oh, no, I
How does
think
someone
that
handle that?
happens. Oh, I think that's such a
Sure.
good question, actually. It happens all the time. You're so right, especially as kids get older, right? And they're teenagers and the relationships are more volatile. And it's very easy for them to call the other parent. And if they sense daylight between the two parents, they'll maximize it, right? If they know, oh my gosh, daddy will come rescue me, then they're for sure going to maximize that opportunity. To
Yeah.
your credit, to say, honey, take a break. I understand what you did is, in my opinion, exactly the right thing. You validated. I'm sorry that you're frustrated. I'm sorry you're having a hard time or fighting with mom or, fighting with your siblings, whatever the situation is. Um, you're validating. You're not saying don't call me or go get your
Right.
shit together. You're saying, I hear you. I'm sorry you feel that way. Right. And then you're saying, there are coping strategies that you have available to you, right? You are a smart, capable kid. Take a break, go on a run, write in your journal, walk away. But what you're not doing is just as important. You're not saying, oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, mom of yours, she is a
Right.
horrible parent. Can't
Yeah.
believe that she would ever put you in that position. That is insane. I'm on my way over to rescue you.
Yeah.
Okay. That is what you didn't do,
Yeah.
which is most important in this case. And what you did do was set her up to rely on her own strength and resources to get through difficult times. We're not always going to be there to rescue our kids from their hard times, right?
Yeah.
It's painful. My 25-year-old daughter right now is trying to figure out a whole job change thing.
Mm.
I'm consumed by it inside, but I can't tell her, like, this is what you should do, right?
Right.
That's not my job. She's
Yes.
25. What I'm trying to do for her is be there. I'm here to talk to you about it if you want to talk. I'm so sorry. This is so hard for you. You have the tools to make this decision. You're smart and capable. I know you'll do the thing that's best for you.
Yeah.
And to give them their own, put the strength back in their court. You are strong, you are confident, you are capable, and not undermine your co-parent is the right choice.
I feel like I deserve a medal, maybe.
I
Or
think you do. I think you do.
well, let me tell you what. The me of, yeah, 3 years, maybe, certainly 4 years probably ago would have been like, yeah, that bitch mother of your, like, I don't know if I would have said bitch, but maybe. But I mean,
Well,
it's,
but look how you've grown then.
yeah, well, then
Okay.
that's, yeah, for sure.
No, really, that's where nobody's perfect,
Mm-mm.
right? We've all made mistakes. Okay. I know I sound like, I'm saying all the right things, and I work on this all the time. I work on
Sure.
it every day with all kinds of clients. That doesn't mean I was perfect during my own
Yeah.
divorce. I didn't do everything just right. None of us do.
Yeah.
The challenge is, okay, we did make some of those mistakes. Own them,
Yeah.
own them, and say, I could have done better. Kids, ex, whomever, I could have done better. I want to learn from it, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to try and do better next time.
Yeah.
And that will get you a million miles.
Yeah.
That's such a gift to give to your kids, to the people around you. Just to say, I'm sorry, to say it with sincerity, it's a huge gift. I think you
Yeah.
have to give yourself credit for the wins. You have a win there.
Yeah, I think that's always hard. I think for a lot of folks, I do think maybe men, especially. I was talking about this with someone, a guest recently, Dr. Dean, and we were basically sort of talking about how men are really bad at receiving compliments
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing wins. But it is really really important. And I didn't. I think I'm. It's so hard sometimes to evaluate yourself, right? Like I was talking to someone, I don't know who the hell it was, but we're talking about you can't be your own editor, right? And so getting feedback is
Yeah.
always a good thing, right? And so, but I don't have a partner right now, and so I don't get. So I'm like, did I do that right? I think so. I
Yeah.
think that's. And so it's always nice to get that validation and get that feedback. And because of that, I'll go celebrate it.
As you should.
Yeah,
It's something I tell clients all the time, truly. Take the wins.
yeah,
You know, they're not, they don't come every single day. They don't come with every decision. So when you realize that something went well or you did something that you want to repeat, pause and soak that in because that's part of what will enable you to make that decision again next time,
true, very true. Yeah, it's like a
right? That you
positive
think about it.
reinforcement. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The positive reinforcement, the same way you would do it for your kids, right?
Yeah, very true. Andra, this has been great. How do people find you, your socials, your website, or whatever? If someone wants to work with you or get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah. So my website is betterthanbeforedivorce.com. And I have a bunch of free downloads there too. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Divorce is a Shit Sandwich, which I send out every week. There's
I
a
like that.
blog post and I answer a reader's question, and you're also welcome to submit one. And I also give a resource that's related to divorce somehow. Sometimes it's a book or a podcast to listen to, or all kinds of different things in there. So that's the newsletter, so they can visit there. That's a great way to stay in touch. And I'm always happy to hear from people, to answer questions. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing it. I really appreciate it. So the last question that I ask everyone, as you know, is what words of wisdom would you impart to a man just beginning his divorce journey?
Well, the thing I would tell any man who is starting on this journey is to be kinder to himself than he probably thinks he should be.
Mm,
And that will apply to every decision across the board. Um, Talk to yourself like you would talk to a dear friend, a sister, your, daughter, son, mother, someone else who was going through this. Chances are you wouldn't say to them, "You're being a wimp, get your ass up and do
right.
better." You would say, "It's understandable that you're having a really hard time. Give yourself some credit for the things that you're doing well and some time to figure out this process, get the support that you need." That reminder to be kind to yourself throughout this process, truly, I say to people all the time, is the one thing I hope they walk away with. This is hard. It is exhausting, and your feelings are valid and it's understandable. So be kind to yourself as you go through the process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Since my separation in July of 2019, I have done an incredible amount of work on myself. I've had many different therapists, life coaches, and went through different programs. I've taken all that I've learned and put it into my own program called Forged by Fire. If you are interested in having me help you navigate your divorce, please hit my website, risingphoenixdivorcecoach.com. I look forward to working with you.